So we're back for another episode of Marketing Monday. Did you know we do Marketing Monday now?
No, but I'm so excited for Marketing
So Seeking Wisdom was so popular.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. It's Seeking Wisdom grew, and it's still growing. But what we heard from people over and over is like, look, we like the book reviews, we like the DC rants and lectures, but we heard from we have a core audience of a lot of marketers and a lot of salespeople.
A little more practical.
Yeah, and they're like, but where's that stuff?
Yeah.
And we were thinking of new channels, and we're like, wait a second. Audio is a format that we're already very comfortable with. I can just get in here and talk about anything. We can bring on guests. And so we launched Marketing Monday. And so that's what we'll do with this episode, which is perfect because you actually, conveniently enough, you have a book out.
That's
you
for
just
marketers.
stumbled into town today.
Yeah, it's great.
So I want to introduce yourself first, and we got a lot to talk about today. So
Awesome.
Okay.
So my name is Allen Gannett.
Yes.
And I'm the CEO of a company called Track Maven. Are we on right now?
We're on.
Oh,
that's how good this is.
It's just rolling right in.
Are you tired of doing this yet?
Like doing podcasts?
Book tours, explaining who you are.
No.
Yourself,
I just,
like,
every
okay.
time my mom listens and she goes, Alan, that wasn't the best intro. I'm like, Mom,
Well,
I
so
thought we
now
were
she
done being
knows.
critical of me.
Right.
And so Track Maven's a marketing analytics company. So we basically track data from a huge variety of big consumer brands, tell them what's working, what's not working, what sucks, what doesn't suck.
Yep.
And then I have my first book coming out June 12th.
Okay.
And so it's all about...
I mean, if you ask me, the book is out.
Oh, it's right there. It's in front of you.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, the awkward
Okay.
thin print on demand version.
Okay.
And basically for the book, I was talking to all these marketers and they're all like, oh, like I'm not creative enough. Like I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about?
Huh.
And it turns out that...
Can you fix this book?
Yeah, I can
What
fix
the
this.
hell?
Hold on. This is for those of you listening.
Yeah.
Dave does not know how to fold.
No,
a
I'm not the
He has not written a book
designer
yet.
in the
Yeah,
room,
yeah.
so we're good.
And so basically for the book, I tackle this question of whether or not you can learn to have moments of creative genius. And so I'll hold the answer for later in the
I want to
episode.
unpack that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's very applicable for marketers, creatives, entrepreneurs, all of the above.
When did you start the company?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Oh my God.
You're a young guy.
I know. I was 12 when I started.
You were 12.
Yeah, it was really
No,
good.
seriously. Tell me the story.
Okay,
about the
so
company, 'cause
I,
people want to know.
So I started Track Maven about a year out of school.
Yeah.
And during college, I had started a Facebook performance marketing company back when Facebook performance marketing was like just getting started.
Yeah. What year was that? Was it like 2010?
This is 2010.
Okay.
You nailed it.
So I know, just because I'm just trying to unwind. Like we think a lot about like. I love thinking about like the first person to do email marketing, right? Probably was 90% open rate, 80% click rate.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just trying to think like that's
Back then
cool.
it was so easy.
So you got on Facebook ads early.
So back then you could get like perfect clicks
Yes.
for any ad for like 5 cents a click.
Yeah.
Like any ad. Like you could be advertising the dumbest thing.
What were you at? But you're in college, though. Like, why were you playing around with Facebook
So I
ads?
started a company that was doing lead gen. And so we were a lead gen company, which is like not the most fun thing in the world, but basically figuring out how to get people to convert on lead forms. And so it was like literally growing up in data-driven performance marketing.
Gotcha.
And so we sold that company for like a very small amount of money.
Yep.
And
Enough to get a nice jacket.
this is a nice jacket that I bought on ASOS, $80.
Yeah.
And so then I took a job as CMO of a venture-backed startup in town because people were like, he's young, but like he kind of gets it.
Yeah.
And
He knows the internet.
He kind of knows the internet.
Yeah.
Like he knows Facebook marketing.
Right.
And then from there, I spent about a year doing that. And I realized, one, I really don't like working for other people. Like I'm really bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, data in marketing like is oil and water, but it shouldn't be. Like most marketers are like, I'm a creative. But then most marketers also like, shit, I need to use data.
Yeah.
And there's this weird sort of tension there. And so I was like, I love data. Like I can talk about data all day. And so the whole idea for Track Maven was, and our logo's a dog, so excuse the pun, but like to be a marketer's best friend.
Right.
And so to like, we're the ones, like we suck in all your data, we give you reports, we give you visualizations, we give you answers about what you should do differently.
So did you bootstrap the company? Did you go and raise money? Because I'm assuming like you're a marketing guy. I'm assuming you weren't building the tracking software behind the scenes.
No, so we raised money right from the start.
Gotcha.
So we had a PowerPoint.
Cool.
And like it was me and a PowerPoint.
Nice.
Yeah, and we
Nice.
raised a seed round, then I hired a team, and then we built it. And our first customer was Martha Stewart Living.
That's awesome.
Love her.
Well, how did you get her?
It was a random intro through one of our investors, and this is a fun story.
Hit me.
I saw Martha at a cafe. I don't know her. I'm just calling her Martha because, like,
Well, I mean,
everyone calls her Martha.
What are you gonna call her, Miss Stewart?
Yeah, Miss
like,
Stewart.
Of course, it's Martha.
And so I see her at a cafe. This was like 3 months ago.
Uh huh.
I go up to her, and I think it's her, but like it's not quite clear. But I go up to her, and I'm like, Martha, and she's like, yes. And I'm like, just so you know, you were my first customer, and I so appreciate that. And she goes, oh, Josephine, who I guess is her assistant. Josephine, come here. Give Josephine your card. What's the company's name? I was like, Track Maven. And she was like, oh, I'm sure we love it. We love it.
I just like, I've never heard of that in my life.
I've never heard of it. And by the way, this was like literally.
I'm sure we love it.
This was like 2 weeks after they canceled after 4.5 years of using us.
I'm sure we love it.
I'm like, oh,
That's
great.
amazing.
Love Josephine. So anyway, she was very kind. And she's very loving in person.
That's awesome. Why did you, like, I want to focus on marketing, but I can't help not ask this question. Why did you, like, what have you learned? This is a huge question. Like, what have you learned from what year is it now? 2018, 8 years?
Yeah.
8 years of this company? Like, are you still having fun doing it?
Yeah.
Like, do you still get to do marketing?
Yeah. So it's super interesting. Like, as you build a company, your role changes. So, the company now, so yes, it's 6 years old. So I've been doing marketing as a thing for about 8 years. And when you first start, you sort of do everything.
Yeah.
And then you learn really quickly that's annoying everybody as you get bigger, because all of a sudden you have like 20 people and they're like, can you please stop doing my job? You're like, okay, I can stop doing your job.
But you can't not care.
Yeah,
though. Like,
you can't
especially
not
if if marketing is your thing, you're not going to care about how your website looks, the headline, this subject line. Like, that feels hard.
100%.
Yeah.
And so for me, what's been fun is like, as we get bigger, I have sort of like, I find pet projects to scratch my marketing itch. So like some years it's been our user conference. I lean in a lot. Right now it's a book.
Right.
Sometimes it's been like our content marketing
That's
strategy.
cool.
And so I basically need to find something. Otherwise I just go crazy and annoy everyone with like,
Yeah, that job sounds fun. Like, you just get to pick the marketing things. No, I'm just kidding. That's awesome. So when did you know you want to write a book? Like, did you have that in your...
So the book came from, I started giving this talk about 3 years ago.
So I feel like a book is one of those things where, like, I'm sitting here, like, I've seen, like, so many people, I'm like, I could write a book.
Yeah.
I want to write a book, right?
You could.
Yeah, but then it comes to actually writing the book. Like,
oh my God. You could totally do it.
Yeah.
So it's like hard, but not hard, if that makes sense. So basically 3 years ago, I was giving this talk at marketing conferences about how marketers think creatives are just born with these magical skills.
Yeah.
But when you actually read like the autobiography of great creatives, they're like, it was 7 years of very hard work. It was very intentional.
Yeah.
Like, they're all systems thinkers.
Also, I mean, we could talk for so long about this, but like, the whole art of being creative, you can't see. That's a good sign.
That was dramatic.
The whole art of you can't plan it. You can't plan it, right? Like, there's a great. It was in one of Stephen Pressfield's books where he's talking about being an ad guy back in the day, and people would come to his desk and be like, "What do you got for me?" And he's like, "It doesn't work like that. Like, I need to make 10 things in order to get one that's going to be a game changer."
So, and here's where we go. And so I think people misinterpret that.
Yeah.
And so when people hear that, they go, "Well, I don't have that random great idea."
Right.
And the issue is that when you actually look at the stories of creativity, the stories are actually, well, sure, it's difficult and it's confusing, but there is actually some method to the madness. And so the talk led to this idea of like, hey, there could be a book here. And then as I was working on the book, I realized it's more broad than just marketers.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea for the book was, what would happen if you interviewed 25 living creative geniuses? So billionaires, Oscar winners, Tony Award winners, startup founders, like a super eclectic mix. And like, if you just ask them about their creative process, what would you find out? And it turns out there's actually a lot of interesting stuff there. So one, there's patterns. You find over and over again, I talk about in the book, there's these 4 things they all do. There's 4 things they all do that actually enhances their creativity. The second thing I did was I talked to all these academics who study creativity. Yeah. And creativity is actually one of these things that is like super well studied. Like, there's tons and tons of research on like what causes creativity, how do you get better at creativity, is it nature, is it nurture? These questions have all been answered.
Can I tell you a personal story?
I would love a personal story.
I have just in the last probably 2 or 3 years realized that I'm creative.
That's great.
But you know what do you know what can you guess what changed in my life for that to become the case?
Okay, someone gave you positive feedback on something creative you did.
No. Okay, I'll just tell you because there's no way you'll ever guess.
Yeah, this is a hard game.
I never read books. I hated reading. But then when I really started to get interested in marketing, I went. DC started giving me all these books. Old school. He's a huge reader, and so
David Ogilvy shit.
And what was amazing is like I was so lucky to have him. 2.5 years ago, start sending me. He was like my curator. He's like, here, take this book, and I'd be like, okay, and I would read it, and I'd be like, oh my God, this this is awesome because I'd never read something that I hated reading in school and in college because it never applied to anything that I was doing.
Yeah.
But for the first time, I'm reading a book and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what we're trying to do with our website right now. And it was written 80 years ago. I'm like, what else you got for me? And he starts giving me more and more. And it was once I started reading all those books, then I would just catch myself like, oh, I got an idea.
Yeah.
I got another idea. And I got another idea. And now it's become like, it's like Popeye and spinach. Like the more stuff that I can consume, and Ogilvy says it in the book, you unpack, like you consume all this stuff.
Totally.
And then you go away and you unlock your subconscious and then you're like, oh shit.
So Dave,
here's what I want to talk about.
So I think we have to have a little talk.
Okay.
Because we're now going to talk about, so in the book, I talk about the 4 laws of creativity and the creative curve. The first law, consumption. So let's talk about it.
Love it.
So one of the things I found is exactly what you experienced.
Yeah.
All these creatives I interviewed over and over again had some story that went like this. This book is just falling. So here's the book.
Yeah.
Now it's on the table.
Yeah.
Had some story like this. Like Ted Sarandos, the chief content officer of Netflix. I interviewed him. He, as 18 years old, got a job as a video store clerk. And he watched every single movie in the store.
Amazing.
Beverly Jenkins, a famous novelist, she lived right by a library. She was poor. Her escape, she went to the library, read every single book in the library. And so over and over again, you see this trend of these creatives consume huge amounts of content.
I love that.
Huge amounts.
And I love it because probably Ted Sarandos, he doesn't have a, I bet you he doesn't have a framework for creating new content, right? He doesn't have some method that it's just like.
It's subconscious.
Just give the guy a whiteboard and you're like, it's like this, and you do this.
And so the reason why is actually really interesting. So basically, it's kind of cliche when you talk about creativity, talk about right brain, left brain, but we're going to do it because it's important.
Right.
So your left brain is
I still
where
don't really
you
know the difference
like
between both. So
logical, step-by-step processing. So like you're solving a math problem, and it's all conscious. You're
or not solving.
Or not solving. Yeah, you're like carrying the number. You're doing long division. You're doing this whole thing, and every step you're thinking about. And then you finally get the answer. You're like, I got the answer. Good for me. Your right brain is where you store more like distant metaphorical associations. So like think about when you're watching a stand-up comedian, you like get the joke. Like that's your right brain just getting it. Unless it's like Adam Sandler, then it's not funny. And so your right brain does all this subconscious processing. But what's interesting is that your right brain, how it does this processing, it's not actually special. It's just different. It's just quiet. It's just that this type of processing happens below your level of awareness. And only once it finds these ideas, once it connects these distant ideas together, only then does it sort of pop into consciousness. And so the thing is that people mistake this for magic. It's actually not magic. So
and it's funny because everyone says that, which is like that idea that hits you in the shower or at the gym or on a run
but why
or
does
somewhere
that happen?
else, right?
Think about it. It's because your left brain, when you're like in the shower, your left brain isn't firing away trying to answer these like very present questions.
So it's really hard. I think a lot of people struggle with the creativity part because especially if you have a busy job or something that you do is very taxing or stressful, there's a lot of stuff happening, right? Like it's so important to be able to step back and get away from
100%.
it. Because that's when you're going to have the clarity.
So there's 2 things that really drive to aha moments. So aha moments are really well studied by researchers. And the first one is you have to have prior knowledge about what you want to have aha moments about. So the same thing where you were reading all these books. The reason why consumption was such a big pattern was you need to if you're Ted Sarandos, watch a lot of movies to have all those mental models in place to connect.
And I actually and I realize that I just actually don't like reading. Still, I don't. But when I do it for the focus, I say I will read books about business and marketing, right?
You need to go deep.
And then I can go deep.
Yeah.
And that's when I get the good stuff.
Totally. And so that's the first step. The second step is you need to give yourself the space for your left hemisphere to calm down. And so this is why running, commutes, drives, all these things are so important. And if you don't make time for that, and what's amazing is I interviewed all these super successful people, literally David Rubenstein, he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
And they make time to think. Right. And so if you don't have time to think, we're not billionaires, right? We're just these people running around. These people who have way more responsibilities, they even know how important it is.
Yeah. And the funny part is I always I try to I have this personality where I think that I have to write everything down, right? Because I want to have good notes. I don't want to forget anything. I never want to be the person that's hey, Dave, you know that thing we talked about last Tuesday? And I'm like, what? I always want to be on top of that. I should always be
just nod your head and smile.
Just managing ahead, right? But what I realized was the more that I read and the more that I consume and do stuff, remember, I'm selling myself short on how much I'm remembering.
Totally.
Right. And so then I'm trying to like, hey, remember this framework from Ogilvy or this framework from DC or this other thing. And then if you ask me randomly on a Saturday morning out for a run, I'm like, oh, here's how it works.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that when you look at all these things, like we experience these as sort of like, we don't really understand where these ideas are coming from. And because of that, we ascribe all this sort of like divinity to it. But that doesn't actually mean it's divine or supernatural. It just means we don't understand it.
Which is, I love that, because one of the things that DC we talk about a lot on Seeking Wisdom, which is where this is, obviously.
Can we call you DG? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
is
people
DG
call me
DC?
DG.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. People, actually, funny stories, like when I started at Drift, he sent me an email, and there was like 7 people at the company at the time. And so basically everyone that starts gets first name at drift.com, except for me. He's like, I couldn't get you Dave at drift.com. Even though you don't call him Dave, it's David. I still couldn't get Dave at drift.com. He's like, but I set up DG at drift.com.
like that.
And so then just that became
Now
a
everyone
thing.
calls you that.
I don't know what I was going to talk about.
One of the things I think in the book that I think is really applicable to marketers, and this is sort of a big concept, so I'll go sort of high level, we can go as deep as you want.
Yeah.
Is one of the things I found when you look at all the studies around creativity is researchers actually have really got a good understanding of what makes people like something, which I think is so important for marketers. So here it is, right? What they have found is that there's this like specific blend of familiarity and novelty that drives a huge amount of preference and liking. So like if something's too familiar, right, it's kind of boring, like we've seen it, we've done there, we've been that. But oftentimes when we think about creativity, we think about novelty, originality, innovativeness. But actually, we don't like things like that.
Well, if it's too far on the other spectrum, it's like if nobody's proven it, if you go to that new restaurant on Yelp and there's no reviews, you're like, not going
what's
there.
Going on?
Exactly.
And so this is why like Star Wars was so successful. It was literally a Western in space. Like it's the same story arc. Right. There's good guys, bad guys. They're like chasing into the Death Star, whatever. And so
no, this is really important. We talk about this a lot, which is like pattern matching,
100%.
Which is most marketers just still forget to do that. They're like, oh, I got an idea, I'm going to make it up. No. Do you know what the great marketers do before they go and create the next video or write the next article or write the next book? They go and find other examples. 100%. It's not copying. It's going and 100%. Find what has been proven, updating. What already works.
Kanye West literally just tweeted about this.
He just tweeted about this. Yeah, and I posted it on my Instagram.
I was like, oh my God, it's part of my book campaign.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? And now it's so much so that like we have this conversation so many times in the marketing team here at Drift where like now if you don't go and find it, I want to know, okay, hey Alan, this is great that you wrote this new article. Who was your inspiration for this article?
Yeah.
I don't have what? Well, I would be going and looking at like what headlines have already been popular, what format has been popular, what video. So that's a huge piece.
One of the great ways, so there's actually a lot of interesting studies around this with music that I think really make this point well. So they basically played a song for someone that they'd never heard before, and they played it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the first time you hear the song, you're like, what is this?
Right.
The second or third time, you're like, okay, this is not that bad. The 10th time, you're like, I love this song. And the 15th time, you're like, please stop playing Hotline Bling.
Yep.
Like, we're over this, right?
Some people.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah. And so basically what they found, this is why the book's called The Creative Curve, is there's this bell curve relationship between familiarity and preference.
100%.
The more you see something, the more you like it, but only up until a point. Yeah. Then you get bored and you want something new and more novel.
I actually have this in a slide. I'm genuinely enjoying this conversation, which is great. I have this in a slide for a talk that I give. I stole it from Andrew Chen, who was growth at Uber. He calls it the law of shitty click-throughs.
Yes, I've seen this.
Right? I love this chart. It's the law of shitty click-throughs, and it's the same reason why if you're any good at Facebook ads, that frequency is so important, right? The frequency is like the amount of times you see an ad. 5 or 6 is a sweet spot. 1, it's not very good.
You have no idea what
10, 15, you're showing it too much, right? So it's the same thing.
And they've seen this. What's amazing is scientists have studied this, and they found this bell curve relationship when you look at paintings, advertising. But here's one of the things I think is really interesting. So scientists have found this bell curve relationship, but only for complex things. When something's really simple, like your logo color, like your logo or your brand colors, it's actually the more you see it, the more you like it indefinitely.
Right.
And the reason why is that scientists call it perceptual fluency. And it's basically the idea with things that are very simple, we basically just say, oh, we've seen it before, we know it. And the fact that it's so easy to process, we mistake that for liking it. So that's why in marketing and branding, like colors are so important, logos are so important. It's because these subtle things.
Is that all in the book?
It's all in the book.
Those lessons that you're talking about?
All in the book.
No, because it's cool because I didn't have a copy, so I didn't do a deep dive, but I didn't expect it to have you to have so much like psychology related lessons, which to me is actually, that's the most exciting stuff. Like the creativity stuff is one thing, but we love learning about the things that are rooted in science.
Totally.
Like we love, Robert Cialdini's book, obviously the 6 principles there, like baking all that stuff into your marketing.
The book, sort of going on the familiarity novelty thing, what I tried to do is I've read a lot of business books, and my biggest hang up with business books is I love like narrative storytelling, but there's usually not enough science, and every chapter just sort of is an anecdote supporting the original thesis.
Yep.
So this book, the entire book, every chapter is like a new concept, and it's all science supported. So there's like 5,000 pages of notes at the end, all that kind of stuff. Made it a pain in the ass to write, but is like hopefully like actually actionable.
Let's dive. So people can go get the book, right? Does it matter when we release this episode?
It doesn't matter, but you can do it if you do it the week before, the week of. It makes me really happy.
When are you launching the book?
June 12th.
Okay. All right. So we'll do that. Because I think it'll be a better story.
Love
so we'll do it June 12th-ish, week-ish. But so I don't want to give away all the book. Make people go and check it out. It'll be everywhere. Amazon. I already saw the links and everything. Go check it out. I want to dive into the writing process because I was going to ask you, like I think I could go write a book right now, but it'd be like Dave's thoughts, right? Like there would not be 500 pages of reference notes in the back. So like, why did you go and take on like? What was your, like, are you in a library doing research? Like, where did you get all this science from?
Yeah. So basically, for the book, I did a couple things. So the writing process took a while because, like, I have a job.
I want to actually go all the way into this. So tell me, you have the idea.
So
I'm going to write the book. Officially, I'm going to write it.
So here's I'll start from the very baby beginning. Yeah. So I was giving this talk. Someone was like, this would make a good book. I was like, okay. And so then I talked to one of my friends who had sold a book that did really well.
Yep.
And he was like, oh, you should talk to my agent. And I was like, okay. And so I talked to his agent, and the book world, it turns out, it's a lot like startups. There's a lot of gatekeepers, people who like everything's about warm intros. And so his agent turned out to be this guy who I later found out was like the business book agent. He's like 71. He did Mark Benioff's book, Satya from Microsoft, Eric Schmidt from Google. It was like, okay, I got the picture. And so I talked to him, and he was like, hey, I really like this idea. But it's not where it needs to be yet. Why don't we develop it for a few months? So I basically started writing the book, sort of getting sort of mentorship and advice from this guy who is like literally 71. It's like one of the biggest business book agents in the world. And
like writing the book, like you're just in a Word doc, like banging out chapters?
So basically my process was on the front end, I was doing 2 types of interviews and 1 type of reading. So I was interviewing creatives. So at this point, I knew I wanted to write a book about how creativity can be unpacked. So I figured, okay, I'm going to interview people who are really successful. And so I just started cold emailing people. And I had this sort of social proof of I had this agent who was sort of a rock star agent. So I was like, hey, the book's not picked up by a publisher yet, but my agent's Jim Levine. He's done the books for Eric Schmidt and Mark Benioff and all these people. And so I got a couple interviews that way, which was really great. And then I started interviewing academics. My whole thing was I'm going to interview all the leading academics in creativity. And creativity is studied in neuroscience, psychology, sociology, anthropology. Like, there's a lot of different fields that touch on it. And so it turns out, by the way, no offense to the academics listening, but academics really like to talk about their work. So that part's really easy. And then I went and I basically pulled the papers for like literally, this was thousands of pages of peer-reviewed research on these different topics. And I started putting in this giant workflowy document. So workflowy, for those of you who've never checked it out, is this like awesome outlining tool that has infinite sublevels. So you can like create outlines within your outline for indefinite times of periods. And so basically I started putting all my notes in there, and anything that I thought was interesting, I could put more research in and actually put it in. And so I was doing these interviews. I was transcribing them using rev.com. I was putting all the notes into workflowy.
Yep.
And it started to like come together. Like as I was consuming all this information, like I started making connections.
Did you edit the transcripts?
No. So I had a VA who basically took the transcripts and went through and like made sure they weren't crazy.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so at that point, basically, is this too much detail?
No, I love it. This is the detail I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point, as the outlines started coming together, only then did I start actually writing chapters. And so for the book proposal process, so one of the big secrets of writing a nonfiction book is you don't actually write the book first, which is kind of great. It's kind of like a startup. Like you do sort of like a pitch deck. So you write 1 or 2 sample chapters, and then you write this like 15-page plan, the most important section of which is the marketing plan of like, why this book, why now, why you.
tell me about the marketing plan though. Like you have to tell them, hey, we're going to email it to this 100,000 people, and like
yeah.
What do you get out of that?
So basically, as a marketer, that was like the most fun part because I was like, oh, like I can write a marketing plan all day.
Yeah.
So my whole plan with the marketing plan was I'm gonna put so much stuff in there that like it's obvious that this guy's crazy.
They're just gonna be like, yeah, this is gonna work.
This guy's fine.
Yeah. So tell me what was in there. What did you put in there?
I put a list of like I think 40 events I'd spoken at in the last year.
Yep. Where you just said, I'm going to try to go back to all these.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus a list where I'm like, here's 20 I know.
Yep.
I put a list of like the top 10 editors of major publications who I was friends with.
Yep.
I put a list of 100 podcasts that I was like, I can probably get on.
Yep. Shout out.
And then I also put a whole bunch of stuff around sort of the audience I'd built with Track Maven and showing that, hey, this is something I like know how to do. I coach others on how to do. And so it was very, very like actionable.
Right. So it wasn't necessarily like on June 12th we were going to do X, and then on the July 4th we're going to do Y.
It was more just like I'm resourceful.
Can I show you that this is a good investment?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you basically how it works is you put together the proposal, and then it's a lot like VC. You send it, your agent sends it to all these different publishers, and then you get back responses. And the ideal is to have multiple. And so there was 15 publishers we sent it to.
Yep.
One was like, this is terrible. And I was like, noted. And then 12 were like, we like it, but think the market's too small, which I don't understand, but it's okay. I'm over it.
Anyone who does marketing.
Yeah. And then 2 were like, we love this book and want it. And so that was all it took. And then so we ended up signing it with Currency, which is part of Penguin Random House. And so that's been a super cool experience because like you have an editor and there's copy editors and like they have audio departments. So I just recorded the audio book.
How much, tell me about like, then they say yes.
Yes.
And then you're sitting in your house somewhere and now you're like, oh my God, I have to write this thing.
Yeah. And so it's basically more of the same. So it's like just doing more interviews, more research, more outlining.
Mentally, did you map out the whole thing? Here's the outline and then literally go chapter by chapter by chapter in order?
It was more of, I basically did as much research as possible. And then it sort of organically started to come together. So like, in the book, the first half is basically disproving this idea that creativity is this like mysterious, wondrous thing that has like no rhyme or reason. And then the second half of the book is these 4 patterns I found among the creative geniuses that actually like are things you can do that are actionable. So as I was researching, I heard over and over again these things like, hey, I consumed like an entire library's worth of books. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so that formed into a chapter.
Who did, and then are you thinking like, oh, this would be a great section to have a graphic with?
Yeah.
And you start drawing, or it's like you're as an editor being like, we need something that's going to show
Yeah.
this.
So the art of a book is really interesting. So basically, as an author, you're responsible for delivering the finished manuscript, including all images.
Yep.
So I went and found an illustrator who I liked, who happened to be my neighbor.
Nice.
And I wanted like a zillion images. And they wanted like 15. And so I think I sent 40. And they were like, let's start with 15. And they edit out the ones they don't like.
You put them in where you want them.
I put them in where I want them.
Also, every business book is like 250 pages.
Yeah, that's a thing.
So that's perfect.
That's a thing.
All right.
And the cover is actually really fascinating.
Tell me about the cover.
So the cover...
Did your illustrator friend neighbor do that?
No, so this was a different one. So the cover is one of these processes that you have as an author very little ability to like veto, but you have some influence over because you're like, I'm going to sell the book for like years of my life.
Right.
And so the cover was one of these processes where you're like, do we make it very businessy? Do we make it very creative? What if we want to aspire to young people, old people? And so it turns out, guys, people judge books by their cover.
Oh, sure they do.
It's really important.
Yeah.
So basically, I hired this guy, Rodrigo Corral, who's like a baller. He did Jay-Z's book. You know Diaz's books, like all the Chuck Palahniuk books. Like
How'd you find him?
My agent, this was again, I'm like kind of a little bit of an idiot sometimes, was like, oh, like you should talk to this guy. And I talked to him. He's like, oh, I'll work with you. And then I like Google him. And there's like this New York Times article about how he's the cover guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
And then you use all your advance money to pay for him
exactly.
to do
There's
the cover?
there's no money. And so basically it was cool though seeing that process because it went from like, okay, do we go very, very formal to do we go very, very artsy? And we ended up with something in the middle because we realized that this is a book that aspires to like help like creatives achieve great things, but also has a lot of applicability to like the CMO of like a big Fortune 500.
Totally.
And so you need to hit that crossover.
All right. I love it. I wanted to talk about that because I know you're going to do 100 other podcasts, and I think that they're not all going to ask you about the book process. So, but before we wrap up, I got to talk to you about something.
Okay.
I want to know your LinkedIn video process.
Oh my God.
Because this is the guy that I got this from. We have been like for the last 2 months, just LinkedIn video has blown up.
Yeah,
but you were there even earlier, and you were the one that DC was sending me all these videos, like all these comments, all these views, and you have a crazy system. Can you tell me about?
Sure.
Can you tell me about how you got on? Actually, I want to know like all the way back. When did you start doing LinkedIn?
Okay,
video?
the LinkedIn video story is really silly.
Tell me.
Okay.
It's always silly. It's never
really
like
silly.
calculated.
It's really silly. So I literally saw. So a big part of the book is about timing, and so as I was writing this book, LinkedIn video came out, and I was like, oh, like a big part of my book is about how like anytime there's a new platform, there's all this opportunity. And so I was like, oh, well, this is like kind of meta.
Right.
And so it was in private beta, and I was like thinking way too much about this. Like I'm not dorky at all. And so I had a dream. This is a really embarrassing thing. So I literally had a dream, and for some reason in this dream, Jeff Bezos owned LinkedIn. Let's just go with it. My dream got confused between Jeff Weiner and Jeff Bezos. And so I was on a rooftop hotel bar.
Yes.
This is 100% true.
Okay,
I have
you.
this
I
dream
believe you.
that Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
I'm talking to him, and I'm
Yeah.
like, Jeff, you own LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
don't know why. And you really need to give me access to LinkedIn video. Like you really do. And he was like, sure, man, and gave me access. And I woke up.
On the roof
I
deck
woke
at
up.
this-
I woke up and I was like, that was a bizarre dream. And then I was like, I should post that on LinkedIn. Like, I bet you someone will find it funny on LinkedIn and give me access. And so I posted on LinkedIn. I changed Jeff Bezos' Jeff Weiner because that part was too nuanced for like the internet.
No, people would
have no.
You just got 1,000 comments. He's not the
Yeah,
CEO of
exactly.
LinkedIn, you idiot. Yeah.
And so I post this, and it was like, I just had a dream that Jeff Weiner gave me LinkedIn video beta access. I think this officially means I spend too much time on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that was the post. And literally, like, all these comments, and like literally 8 hours later, Jeff Weiner posts, no, it just means you can see the future, smiley face. And he gives me LinkedIn video access.
He did that personally?
He did that personally.
And like, what, you got an email?
And no, it just like turned on. And then like,
amazing.
and then that post got like ridiculous amount of comments and likes. And so then I started posting.
You're already primed to be the video guy.
I was there you go.
Yeah.
And so I basically was like, okay, like what can I do on video that like I would enjoy and that other people would enjoy?
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time of my life just because I'm like a customer facing, market facing CEO meeting people.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just harass my friends to do videos.
I love that because what I liked about your videos a lot was
we're gonna do a video.
We're gonna do a video after this. They never seemed to be like they weren't scripted. And what I love is like it always seemed to be like you were at a conference and you ran into Joe Chernoff and you're like, Joe, let's do a video together. And he's like, fuck, do I have to do this, right? And then you do a video, and then you started doing all those. But what I learned from behind the scenes, DC told me this: you have an awesome system behind the scenes that made this work.
Okay,
which not surprising now that I know your book process. It seems similar.
Yeah. So basically, the process is, so I do these videos, I record them on my iPhone. Super simple, not fancy. Yep. I sometimes I have a microphone, a Shure iPhone microphone.
Yep, I got one of those now too.
That is like, it's good.
I got all the apps. Oh, that's the Baby Shusher app for Annie. But I have D-Shake, Type-O-Matic.
Amazing.
Whatever the other one's, $4.99.
So basically what happens is I shoot the video. We're going to do it after this. It literally takes 3 minutes to film. It's a 90-second max video. I upload it to Dropbox for my phone. I email it to my intern.
Which takes forever, by the way. That's the worst part. And then if you lose service.
Internet these days. Kids these days. Okay. And then I emailed.
I just wanted to say that because I wanted to make sure you didn't have some special hack. Like
with Dropbox?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay.
Maybe we should go to Box.net. Box.com now.
Maybe.
And then my intern uses D-Shake, which is this app that for like $3 makes it look like you had a stabilizer, at least decently.
Yep.
Then we send it to this other guy on Fiverr who for like, $10 captions it, trims it, cleans it up, sends us back a Dropbox link. And basically there's a Dropbox folder of like just like an army of backlog of videos. Except right now I'm kind of low, which is why we're doing a video.
Okay, so I have two questions, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Number one is I totally get the captions thing.
Yeah.
But I want to, and I don't know if I should test this or not. Probably should. I feel like when I see a video with captions though, so for a while I believed that captions is like what you needed because everyone's scrolling with the sound off. But now I kind of believe more that like when people see captions, they know that's some marketing video. Where if it's like me walking down the street, I don't know, maybe we'll figure it out.
Okay, so Dave,
go ahead.
I can promise you,
captions.
with like 100% accuracy, captions, mind-boggling.
Okay. I'm in.
I'm
in.
So
I'm gonna copy your system.
That's the marketing aspect, and the second aspect is accessibility.
Accessibility.
So 2 for 1.
You're right. Yeah, so all my videos will start. Yeah, so and man drinks coffee, stumbles, says that's what it's gonna say. So I like that system. I don't know what my second question is. Oh yeah, okay. So then, but here's my other problem is I want to post this video now.
Yeah,
I don't want to wait.
You have to wait.
I gotta wait.
You gotta wait. Yeah, I do it. So on LinkedIn, I find that like the morning is the best because people are like getting to work, they're like rolling in.
But like tactically, do you have something on your calendar that's like today post LinkedIn video?
So basically on Sunday afternoons. I write all of my sort of copy for the week, and then my intern posts in the morning. Because otherwise,
on Monday,
it's every weekday.
Every weekday you post a video?
Every weekday, no. I post a video Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I post something on LinkedIn every day.
Gotcha.
But otherwise, like if I have a breakfast meeting, it's just like a little too much coordination to go on.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, we got to jump. We're going to go record a video. You'll check it out on LinkedIn. You're Allen Gannett, which, by the way, you're at Allen on Twitter, so
check it out.
Shout out for being early on Twitter when you were running Facebook ads back in the day.
By the way, that's not the story, but we can't say it on there's a much darker story.
There's a much darker story.
Someone's dead. They're in a ditch somewhere.
And you stole their at first name.
Yeah, I pushed them down the hill. It was a whole thing. This just got X-rated really
Allen,
fast.
thank you for doing it.
Bye.
All right, we'll see you.